He's a man of strong Christian faith, and he is appalled by the allegations. And I suspect now that he's, as it were, banished to the sort of open prison somewhere on the Sandringham estate.
Few people have ever had a front row seat to the glittering and often shocking world of British royalty like this man did. And now, decades later, a new memoir from Princess Diana's former butler is sending shockwaves through palace corridors, exposing years of entitled behaviour that no one truly expected. What dazzled the public with glitz and precision may have concealed a far messier reality behind the palace doors. Even Queen Elizabeth II, celebrated for her unshakable composure and command, reportedly struggled at times to maintain control over the swirling dynamics around her. Paul Burl
Will be sensing the need to give duty of care. This man is a broken, finished man at best. I would strongly believe that he would very much like him to testify, but knows that to stand up and say that is a hiding.
Who spent more than 20 years navigating these hallowed halls, carries memories that are as revealing as they are explosive. Burl began his royal career serving as a footman to the Queen, the kind of role that gives you a front-row view of ceremony and protocol, but he quickly moved up the ranks. He later became butler to King Charles III, back when he was still the Prince of Wales, positioning him at the very centre of royal life and all its unseen tensions. Yet it was his role as personal butler and trusted confidant to Princess Diana.
Great to have you. There are, of course, reports today accusing Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor of sharing another official document with one of his business contacts, but we've seen a week of negative headlines and revelations. How concerned will the king be about this and all the allegations?
It would be astonishing if he wasn't concerned.
That would define his legacy. From 1987 until her tragic death in Paris in 1997, Burl was her constant presence, witnessing the highs, lows, and private dramas of one of the most famous women in the world. That intimate connection,
Appalled by the allegations, and of course affected in his role as monarch as well, because the headlines are all about this, which, you know, no institution wants that, and he is trying to do and is doing an extraordinary job in his...
is why his accounts continue to captivate audiences decades later. His first memoir, A Royal Duty, sold over 2 million copies worldwide, demonstrating just how ravenous the public was for a peek behind the palace's polished exterior. Now, at 67, Burl has released a follow-up, The Royal Insider, My Life with the Queen, the King and Princess Diana, published in January 2026 by Hachette Mobius. The book has already drawn attention for its bold claims about Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor, claims that some readers may find hard to dismiss or ignore. According to Burl, the incidents he observed weren't isolated.
People have to remember when they just think of him or Andrew, what is in his mind. Look at he and the Queen. Their constant concern about those women who've been sexually violated, those who've been ill-treated. The Queen was, I think, just yesterday doing that.
I had lots of interactions with Andrew over the years, he states plainly. I saw his pomposity firsthand. He would tell people to F off, get out of here, F off, which was obscene. The way he treated people. Staff reportedly grew frustrated and even revolted at times because their shifts stretched late into the night. On the surface, these late hours might seem trivial, but Burl insists they were symptomatic of a deeper pattern of disregard and entitlement within the household. He elaborates that small details, like staff being kept awake by long dinner gatherings, often expose much bigger issues when seen in the broader context of royal life. According to Burl, Andrew regularly hosted events that extended into the midnight hour, forcing palace staff to endure unreasonable hours. Queen Elizabeth II herself, he says, had to step in on occasion.
Good question. He took very tough action back in October when he stripped him of his title. He was kicked out of the Royal Lodge at Windsor. He takes that role as the most important part of what he does. But he's a brother. Now, they may not be that close, but he's nonetheless a brother. And I suspect now that he's, as it were, banished.
But even her direct reprimands allegedly failed to produce lasting change. This suggests a family dynamic where authority and discipline were often challenged behind closed doors, giving a rare glimpse into the unseen tensions of the monarchy. Burl also claims that after being scolded by his mother, Andrew and Sarah Ferguson would deliberately prevent staff from entering their rooms, lingering in bed for extended periods, abusing the system entirely, in his words. These behaviours, Burl explains, didn't appear suddenly. They were patterns with roots stretching back to Andrew's upbringing and the privileges he enjoyed from an early age. From the outset, Andrew was reportedly treated differently than his siblings. Burl describes him as someone who grew up feeling protected and rarely challenged. He even hints that the late Queen herself may have played a role in fostering this sense of entitlement. By the time Andrew was born, she finally had more space in her life to focus on her children, and Burl believes this extra attention and affection shaped Andrew's sense of self from the beginning. Prince Philip, on the other hand, acted as a strict gatekeeper, ensuring that most family members followed protocol before approaching the Queen directly. But Andrew often sidestepped these formalities, creating a distinct dynamic that separated him from everyone else in the royal circle. This early indulgence, Burl argues, set the stage for decades of behaviour that would later become controversial. The story doesn't stop with Andrew alone. Sarah Ferguson, who is now 66, entered royal life from a more ordinary background, a farmer's daughter and the child of a polo manager. Burl claims that Andrew promised her she could have anything she wanted, shaping a couple's lifestyle built on expectation, comfort, and privilege. She had it all, Burl recalled. Because everything she desired was hers, she became accustomed to a level of comfort that mirrored Andrew's own indulgences. Their lives, Burl explains, were intertwined in a world where every desire could be granted, reinforcing patterns of entitlement and shaping how they navigated their royal existence. Yet those privileges came under public scrutiny over time. Ferguson eventually left Royal Lodge, while Andrew gradually lost titles, culminating in October 30th, 2025, when King Charles III officially stripped him of his remaining royal honours, a dramatic end to a long, controversial saga. Andrew's public image suffered earlier too. In 2019, he stepped back from royal duties after a widely criticised BBC interview, which commentators at the time described as devastating to his reputation. Once addressed formally as His Royal Highness Prince Andrew, Duke of York, he is now referred to simply as Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, a transformation that signals just how much both public perception and status have shifted. The palace no longer speaks on his behalf, demonstrating a clear boundary and a dramatic alteration in how he is treated publicly. But the fallout extends beyond titles. It has also reshaped family relationships within the monarchy itself. Over the years, reports have suggested growing distance between Andrew and other senior royals, with trust becoming a sensitive and often strained issue behind closed doors. When a prominent figure suddenly vanishes from official life, questions inevitably arise about loyalty, finances, and the future of family unity. Financial pressures, Burl notes, also compounded the situation. Stepping back from royal duties meant losing official support systems, yet the expectations for royal living standards remained. Media scrutiny intensified as questions arose over property arrangements, security costs, and the ability to maintain the lifestyle expected of a former duke. Even without formal duties, the standards of living tied to status created a delicate balancing act. Public perception, too, shifted dramatically. Once headlines turn negative, they tend to linger, casting a shadow over every new development. Historically, royal institutions often manage narratives to protect reputations. But in this case, palace support appeared limited, signalling a decisive boundary had been drawn. The message was clear. Some consequences, even for royalty, are unavoidable. Burl's broader point emphasizes how personality, privilege, and environment collided over decades to create situations that unfolded slowly but surely, not overnight. His memoir highlights patterns of entitlement, indulgence, and unchecked behavior, and illustrates how these elements ripple out, affecting both the family's internal dynamics and the public's perception. Even the smallest details, like dinner timing or staff restrictions, carry larger meaning when examined in context. Burl's account forces readers to understand the complex interplay between upbringing, power, and expectation, showing that behind the glittering facade of the palace lies a world governed by human desires, ambitions, and flaws. Ultimately, The Royal Insider offers more than just scandalous revelations. It provides a lens into how decades of privilege, missteps, and familial indulgence intersect to shape modern monarchy. And while readers may debate his perspective, the story continues to evolve, showing that the consequences of personality, power, and privilege remain very much alive, playing out in real time as this remarkable saga unfolds before our eyes. Few things reveal the fragility of privilege, quite like watching status collapse almost overnight, and that's exactly what happened with Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor. What stands out most is how quickly a lifetime of confidence, built on royal entitlement, can crumble when public trust starts to erode. For decades, Andrew moved through life cocooned in the power and protection that comes from being a senior royal. But when controversy took centre stage, that shield appeared to weaken in ways few people could have anticipated. The transition from a highly visible royal figure to a private citizen wasn't just symbolic, it reshaped his daily reality in very tangible ways. Reports of tension surrounding living arrangements, especially at Royal Lodge, added a practical layer to the drama. Questions about who would cover maintenance, security, and long-term responsibilities soon entered public conversation, revealing how messy life can become when titles vanish, but the expectations tied to them remain. Situations like this rarely have clean solutions. Family, money, and public image collide in ways that create knotty, almost impossible to resolve scenarios. The monarchy itself, protective of its reputation, had to step back where necessary, and observers note that modern royal influence depends heavily on public approval. One member's controversy can ripple outward, affecting the perception of everyone connected to the institution. That pressure, of course, likely informed decisions behind the scenes, even if full details were never shared publicly. Burl's account paints a striking picture of a man shaped from the start by privilege, surrounded by systems that rarely challenged him until later in life. Readers may see his perspective as either insight or opinion, but the story underlines an essential truth. When family, loyalty, and power intersect with personal choices, the consequences can last a lifetime. And as more details emerge, the fascination with what really happened inside palace walls shows no sign of fading. The story took another dramatic turn when the Metropolitan Police confirmed a review of information linked to Andrew following the emergence of an email allegedly showing him asking his police bodyguard to obtain personal details about his accuser, Virginia Giuffre, back in 2011, including her social security number and date of birth. Whether any officer acted on the request remains unconfirmed, but the very existence of the message reignited scrutiny and public debate. Separately, emails reviewed by the BBC suggest that Andrew may have shared sensitive material from a 2010 Southeast Asia trade trip, reportedly found among millions of files released by the United States Department of Justice. These revelations added yet another layer of examination to events already under intense scrutiny. Throughout, Andrew has consistently denied all allegations, maintaining his stance as legal and public debates swirled. When asked about Burl's memoir, the palace issued only a brief statement. "We do not comment on such books." While short, the response spoke volumes to observers, signalling distance without direct engagement with the claims. Meanwhile, reports indicate a shift in how staff interact with Andrew at his current residence. According to one Sun report, an increasing number of palace employees chose not to work for him, with an anonymous source noting they were under no obligation if they felt uncomfortable. The source added that there's understandably a lot of disquiet, as he is now viewed as a total pariah. These sentiments, while reflecting reported workplace opinions rather than confirmed policy, contributed to a broader narrative surrounding Andrew. The staff, the long hours, and the tense moments described by Burl all combine to highlight how perceptions within the household evolved over time. What he describes had circulated quietly behind palace walls for years, a man raised with privilege, shielded from challenge, and rarely confronted about behaviour that might have been corrected earlier. Now, with titles gone, protection removed, and the Queen herself no longer there as a personal shield, the landscape looks dramatically different. The contrast is stark. Influence, once assumed as a birthright, can vanish almost instantly when the supporting structure disappears. For decades, Andrew operated inside one of the world's most powerful institutions, surrounded by ritual, tradition, and layers of protection. But when that system pulled back, reality looked entirely different, and the shift was impossible to ignore. Reputation inside royal circles depends as much on perception as formal rank. When public confidence falters, the ripple effects hit fast. Relationships shift, opportunities dwindle, and everyday interactions are forever altered. Those who once remained silent may speak openly, while others choose to create distance, avoiding controversy entirely. And Burrell's memoir raises a deeper question: how much responsibility lies with the individual, and how much stems from the environment that shaped them? Growing up in extreme privilege can normalize expectations that seem shocking to outsiders. That disconnect between personal experience and public reaction is where many high-profile downfalls begin. At the center of it all is identity. Someone once introduced with multiple titles, honors, and formal recognition now lives a quieter existence, stripped of the institutional backing that defined most of his life. That transformation is rare, especially on such a global stage, and it explains why public fascination with the story continues to grow rather than fade. Perhaps the most pressing question now isn't about the past, it's about the future. Can trust or reputation ever be rebuilt after such high-profile scrutiny? At this point, the story transcends one individual. It reflects the collision of power, loyalty, and accountability inside an institution built on image and tradition. Privilege can blur the line between confidence and entitlement, and that line becomes visible only when problems reach the public eye. Even the emotional realities of royal families, parents, children, siblings, complicated feelings, don't vanish just because crowns are involved. Loyalty can prolong defensive behavior long past its due, while protective instincts delay hard decisions. When consequences finally arrive, they often come all at once, appearing sudden to the public, though they've been quietly building for years. Burrell's perspective highlights how environments shape behavior over time. Systems designed to protect status can sometimes stunt personal growth if boundaries are rarely enforced. Decades of shielding from criticism can make accountability later in life feel overwhelming, particularly under global media attention. That pressure alone can reshape how someone reacts, perceives themselves, and interacts with the world. Andrew's identity was tied to royal titles, ceremonial roles, and institutional support. Once those pillars vanished, his sense of self and public perception changed dramatically. Adjusting to this reality is both practically and psychologically challenging. Modern audiences expect transparency and accountability, and silence or limited responses leave individuals facing judgment largely alone. The contrast between past privilege and present isolation is stark. Trust, once damaged on a global stage, is nearly impossible to restore fully. Every new report, interview, or memoir adds another layer to a narrative that continues to unfold. History may one day view this saga with sympathy, criticism, or a mixture of both, but the impact is already clear. Reputations, relationships, and legacies have been reshaped, and the biggest question still lingers. Is redemption even possible after such a visible fall from grace? If you watched this breakdown and have thoughts, drop them in the comments below. If it made you see things differently, hit subscribe and stay locked in. For more deep dives like this, don't forget to like the video and share it with someone who needs to see it.